Welcome to another episode of the Doctors Building Wealth podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Ian Thompson III joining us, and he's got such an incredible story of investing in real estate, going out and starting his own nonprofit, starting a locums company. So I'm really excited for you all to hear about his entrepreneurial journey. Welcome, Ian.
Great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So Ian, can you tell everyone about a little bit about your background, but where you started investing in real estate? Because I want people to hear how early you started on.
So I think I could trace it back to college, and you probably very cliche. I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and my college roommate at the time at Texas A&M, his dad was a financial planner, and had given him this book, and my roommate finished it. He said, "Hey, I think you'll like this. You should read this." And it clicked. I had never read a book I felt like that just really, anyway, I enjoyed it. And then I was like, real estate, and I was starting looking through all sorts of stuff, looking at real estate at the time, but I knew nothing. I didn't have any money. I was just a college student. And then later in medical school, and so I took a year off before applying to medical school. I guess people call that a gap year now. I had just decided to apply later and do some other stuff, including studying abroad. But I came back to San Antonio, and I was working for this Spurs as a part-time marketing intern job. And one of the other young ladies I was working with got to talking with her and became friends with her. It turns out her dad was a real estate investor, and I didn't know anybody. None of my dad's friends or parents' friends or circles had anything to do with real estate investing. And I said, "Hey, do you think your dad would let me sort of, is he apprentice or intern or do anything like that?" And she talked to him. She goes, "Oh yeah. Here's his number, give him a call." So I called him, and I sort of interned from an apprentice firm for about 6 months during the rest of that year before I went to medical school, because I felt like you read books, but A, I didn't have any money, and B, didn't feel like I had confidence enough to go do anything myself. And so while working for this gentleman, I met another young guy who was in college at the time, and he had the same kind of goals as I did. And so it was during first semester of medical school that we were like, neither of us had any money, but we figured, well, the two of us can get together. And this is back when you'd find deals in the classified ads and newspapers. And we found a house that we ended up buying for like $13,000 cash, just east of downtown in San Antonio. But we didn't have that money. My sister ran a landscape business, so kudos to her. Much to her credit, she gave us a loan. And I literally walked out, I think, on my biochem final last final for first semester of medical school, and went to the closing. I'd never been to a closing. Made some mistakes, learned how to get a cashier's check and all that stuff, and meet my sister in the parking lot of a bank. She gives me this wad of $13,000. She goes, "Here, this is the money you wanted." I said, "Great." So go in there, get a cashier's check, go to closing, and then we ended up with this real rehab project, flipping. And the flip that did not go right, learned a lot of as they say, tuition and mistakes. Couldn't sell it. Had contractors run off with money. I could just go into so many lessons just on that one project, and then rented it for a while, and then later was able to sell it. And if I just held on to that whole area where I bought that house for $13,000, and you could get a handful of those at the time. Those are $250,000, $300,000 houses these days. So that was my first foray into real estate myself, and then took a little pause to focus on medicine for a while.
So you've gone on to build quite a portfolio, and I know we're going to talk about that, but tell us how you didn't give up at this point and why you ended up going back into real estate despite having had one legitimately, rough experience yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really perspective in how you look at it. When we ended up selling it, I think we each probably cleared $3,000 for, on top of everything we had done wrong and everything that had gone poorly. But I think when you just study it and the numbers, but you get on the treadmill or the merry-go-round of medicine, and busyness of school, and then surgical training. You really don't have much time. But I was still kind of looking at stuff. At one point, it was like 2008 or 2009. I had a 10-unit apartment building under contract in Nashville, a stone's throw from between Vanderbilt and downtown. And I knew it was going to be something good, but after the financial crisis, liquidity was in, and it's a blessing in disguise that I didn't end up doing it, but it would have been a great deal long term. I probably shouldn't have been, spending that time on my day off looking for real estate, but I learned a lot in the process. Got to know the owner, learned some multifamily stuff just hanging out with him. So there's learning process with that. But I got back to it because I always thought that there's value in. I don't invest much in the stock market. And I just think that it registered that I believe in like investing in stuff that I can kick the tires of, I can see, I can touch, and that always resonated with me. So it wasn't until really after I got out of back when I was, I think, after finishing my time in academics, I think that I ended up. There's a lot of story of being an academic, starting a private practice, and then after that, got back into real estate. Once I had a little bit of, a little bit of capital that I could go, as my wife would say, probably play with. Well,
what was that next purchase?
So in 2018 or so, I purchased a 17-unit mobile home park. So at the time, the only real estate that we really had at that point was we were renting out our house from residency. Graduated from medical school at the top of the housing market, graduated kind of at the bottom from residency, and we're underwater in a mortgage. So we managed that house for about 10 years remotely before we sold it last year. But in 2018, bought a 17-unit mobile home park. The reason I'd always been looking at mobile home parks since I was in college. After reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was, you would pick up those real estate flyers and magazines at the grocery store. I don't know if you ever looked through those, and I found in the back this little, mobile home park for like $90,000. I went and hung out with this lady. This was in Bryan College Station, where Texas A&M is, and learned all the numbers. I came home one week and I was like, "Hey, Mom and Dad, can I get a loan and invest in this mobile home park?" I'm like, "Look at the cash flow and everything." They looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, "We're paying this tuition. You should be studying. Don't be." Anyway, but that's kind of where I got, clued in on the mobile homes. And so I had seen this mobile home park pop up, and bought it's just in a small town outside of San Antonio. And it's nice because it was just the lots, not owning the homes themselves, with city sewer and water, which is one of the key things you want to look for is the utilities for mobile home parks. And that's kind of where it really started. That was in like the summer of 2018. And so I guess that was my re-entry more so in the real estate investing.
Now what I've heard all along the journey is you went and got a mentor every time to learn the concepts. Tell us how you found these mentors and how you approached them, because I think sometimes people approach asking for something, but I'm guessing you probably approached them delivering value of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, for that guy, when I was right after college, I worked for free. I paid my gas. I ran around and helped oversee work crews. I had no idea what I was doing. I got sent out to collect rent in parts of town I'd never been to, that I didn't even know. You learned a lot of like where people live, what people will live in. I'd get sent out to fix stuff that, "Here, go fix this refrigerator." I'm like the last person that should be going out to try to go fix the door of a refrigerator or something like that. And then I think something that I think I've heard y'all talk about is that if you just talk about like what you're into, what you do in real estate, people will talk as well. And you discover, not that not to like brag or anything, but you just talk about what you're doing. And then you will find people that are doing stuff in that area and just get pearls of wisdom from them. Honestly, my clinic is one of my biggest classrooms ever. As a urologist, you take care of a lot of older people, and a good chunk of them are, and I love learning different aspects of different businesses from folks, and a lot of them are in real estate. I've learned stuff from builders. I've had deals come out of my clinic before. It's pretty, I think you just have to put yourself out there and be willing to ask. But I think you're right. It's offering first to add value, and work for other people for free. Unfortunately, these days, many people are very transactional. "I'll do this if you do this." But the greatest reward, not even in all business, not even just real estate, is say, "Hey, I'll take interest, I'll provide value, and then the money will come later." So that's something that my dad always said: "Just do good work, the money will work itself out later." So
what a phenomenal thing to teach a kid. Hopefully people remember that. So tell everyone where you are now with mobile home parks and RV parks, and maybe can you tell us some of the upsides and downsides that you see investing in this group of type of properties?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. If you take a snapshot in time, if you were to ask me during the middle of the pandemic, was it, I think it was a challenging time for many people in residential real estate and rental properties. It was indeed for us. Maybe not as bad as some places, but being able to weather a storm where people not paying rent for up to a year and can't really do anything about it. So since then, I have 3 mobile home parks, and 2 RV parks, small apartment building, a handful of single family rentals, and have another RV park under contract now. So currently about 200, I think 43 units with another 33 under contract. One of those large parks is something I co-GP'd as a syndication because it was much bigger than I could take down myself. And so but that was a great, I think mindset lesson, is to say, hey, this is something 10 times bigger you've ever done before, instead of saying like, hey, I think the temptation is like, oh, I can't do that, or but it's really like, how? And that's something I try to tell my kids. It's not can't, but how. How can you do this? And when they're, you just sit down and think about things. There's so many. That's the beauty of real estate, I feel like, is that there's so many ways to be creative about things and partnering with folks. And there's always somebody smarter than you, so you can always reach out and ask. And you could probably test this as well. Many people in the space, they're always love to talk about this stuff and give their wisdom. And like I tell other folks, if I can save you any sleep, tears, headaches, whatever, I will share with you, because I made plenty of mistakes along the way.
Looking forward to the next few years, do you still like mobile home parks and RV parks as an investment?
I do. I mean, when you look at affordable housing, I think there's some mission to it as well. I mean, as you can see across the country, affordable housing is a huge issue. Unfortunately, mobile home parks are not, in a lot of municipalities, are not well liked, if you will, for various reasons. Warren Buffett talks about investing in business where you can have a nice moat around them. Mobile home parks are one of those. Versus, like, if you look at storage as an asset class, there's really few limitations on permitting and stuff to get another storage unit built up down the road that can then undercut by 10% and move. I mean, that barrier to entry is much lower. Mobile home parks, there are very few new mobile home parks that are getting built in the United States. And you have to get special zoning and designation to be able to build those. And unfortunately, there are probably even a fewer number of them as people look for move towards, highest and best use of land and redeveloping. So you'll see that as a lot of issues hitting the papers is, these families are having to move because in their homes and so forth. So I think it's good. I think there needs to be more, because if you look at the cost of building as regulation for permitting and new construction for homes, it's a pretty affordable way to live. I mean, and to purchase a home. As one of my patients once said, he built thousands of homes, historic home, had spent his life building homes, stick built homes and brick homes and so forth. But he said, he got into the mobile home business of essentially figured out how to affix them to land, thereby, because they're chattel loans. It's different. You can't actually finance a mobile home itself. You have to specifically engineer in a way that's permanently attached to the ground to be able to get better financing on it. Actually, Warren Buffett writes, and his companies write most of the loans, and they have a huge stake in the mobile home manufacturing and financing business. But once you get them permanently affixed, then you can FHA, VA loan them, and then you get a 30-year AM on something. Then you can, in a competitive interest rate, then it changes your ability to price it. So you can get utilities to a piece of land and a mobile home on a permanently fixed piece of land. It's a different kind of place. So you can get people into, and the development, that sort of the technology and what I guess the bells and whistles they have in mobile homes now are pretty nice. So I think there's future there, but it's super competitive. So I think it's become more competitive over the last 5 to 10 years, and I'm no expert. So I listen to the people that talk about this on their their mobile home park investing podcasts and stuff. And to my understanding, there are like 40+ billion-dollar funds in the space. So they're just always trying to roll up in these parks. But they usually focus on those parks that have 100 pads or more. So they talk about pads versus doors the way, in multifamily. And then that sort of money is also now moving into the RV park space. And I think RVs are now the new, or at least the way I perceive it, is more of the new affordable housing. As I've gotten into it, just learning how many people live full time in RVs, not just people that are moving around, but people like permanently, in one park, living there long term.
So can you talk to us a little bit about just buying the land versus owning the building itself in these mobile home parks? Like, what do you see the upsides, downsides, which you prefer and why?
Yeah, it's an ongoing question, and it's like there's a guy that runs a podcast about this, and he asks this all his operators and investors the same thing. So I think ideal is that you just own the land in a municipality with city, sewer, water, all the things to kind of minimize your headaches. Because once you get off, well water, then you're almost like a public utility. That's sort of the liability of making sure that the water's clean and all that stuff. Septics, there can be issues with septics. And upkeep costs for that. So the land, if you just own the land, there's really very little upkeep except for making sure the roads and things are clean and stuff like that. Once you own the homes, then it becomes more of the air conditioner went out, the plumbing, that kind of stuff. And so when you own just the land, you are responsible for utilities like sewer and pipe and water that takes up to it. But once it gets in the home, you're not responsible. And I think we have both. So more of the headaches come from when you actually own the homes, and you're either renting, usually renting them out, and that's people not taking care of it as well, and the turnover, and so they say that I think multifamily, the turnover rate is like 45% per year. In a mobile home park where the tenants own the home, the turnover rate, these are national numbers, is less than 5%. So you don't have that rent loss, if you will, from turnover and refreshing paint and all that other kind of stuff. You just keeping it's just lot rent. So it's more like a storage kind of asset.
Can you give us a high level overview of RV versus mobile home and like kind of the upsides, downsides of that?
I think it depends on kind of how you do the RV, and I'm not an expert in this at all. I kind of learn as I go, and I'm kind of in the RV space maybe 15, 16, 17 months, something like that. You have the RV parks with people that are more geared towards the travelers that are coming in for 3 or 4 days. It's more of a resort type look. And those are more I think labor intensive, because you have to have people that are there checking people in and out. They're manning a front desk. They have a shop where, like a camp shop where you can buy different things, and almost like a convenience store. And there's so many different ways on the one side, but you can also grow ancillary revenue around that from renting golf carts, different things, and then you have RV parks where they're more geared towards long-term tenants, where they're going to be there for several months, at a minimum a couple of weeks or years. And those, I think, function more like a mobile home park. I've seen those very similar in how you operate those, and from a management overhead standpoint. Then I've learned there's this whole cadre of folks that work in RV parks called work campers, and they have their own Facebook groups and magazines and stuff, and you can hire work campers that come in, and you give them a pad as part of their compensation with utility hookups and stuff included. And then, depending on what their skill set is, they may, a lot of times you may have a couple that the wife will do the check-in kind of stuff, and the husband will do the grounds maintenance and stuff like that. And you may have a team of that. So it just depends on how you decide to operate it. There's more potential, I think, revenue on the daily, like more when you have more daily rates. But you can use technology, you can do dynamic pricing and all this stuff. All these things I'm still learning, and I'm out there. So I probably have a different take on it, a year or two down the road as hopefully get better at all this stuff, but I'm kind of getting educated as I go.
It's long-term rentals versus short-term rentals, really, was what it is.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Right. You get the short-term rentals, the remote doesn't work, the headaches with that versus, the long-term rental house, you may hear from them once a year or something like that. So
Yeah, exactly.
Now I know you're involved in a number of other things outside of real estate, but before we wrap up real estate, what are your goals with this? Where are you headed? What are you looking to do with your portfolio in the future?
it's a good question. I don't know. I just keep, as my wife says, I think she said I have this disease. So I came home one day, I was like, hey, we got to create another LLC. What should I call it? She goes, Investoritis, because this is your Investoritis LLC. So that was, it's true. I just like, growing and I just like growing, I guess. And so I think at some point exiting, we're doing the one thing, thanks to y'all in your course that we took, what was that? I think about January of 21. Got that, doing my wife helps me a lot in doing the real estate professional status. So that I learned really from y'all's course. And so I think at some point we transition more out of active management into more passive, maybe some more syndications at a larger scale. And then because once you get the scale, then you can you have enough income to be able to employ a team to be able to do that. I think it's getting that we're kind of in that donut. I don't know if it's a donut, but a spot where it really doesn't, where the pain is there, but it's not enough to really justify having more. We probably should. So I don't know. We talk about it a lot.
Well, we hire a little, we have VA team kind of and EA type team, but I imagine a lot of us in this community are going to have family offices someday.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're going to have combined family offices, right? One team, and they're going to work for, 5 or 10 of us, because maybe our holdings are a little bit smaller than the traditional family office multi-billion, but
Yeah.
that's where I see a lot of us going, is family offices. So I imagine you'll be there at some point.
No, I agree. I mean, because you can start leveraging, leveraging to do big things. Because as you say, once you start, you kind of just scratch the surface and you see that, oh man, there's so many more opportunities out there as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about your locums company briefly, and then I really want to spend some time on your nonprofit.
Okay. So I did locum when I was in academics. I did locums to help subsidize and pay for my tuition to business school. And then I left my academic job at the end of 2015, essentially to take a CMO job for a health system, which I did for about 6 years. And during one of those locum stints, I kind of got jilted, if you will. A contract gone bad, went sideways, and in the process learned a little bit more about the business and learned that for all this money that's being paid by hospitals, that doctors, I felt, that are doing the lion's share of the work should be appropriately compensated. And so I'd had that thought for years, and then chewed on it. There's a long story, trying to distill this into very short, but in the summer of 2019 launched, I figured, just, specialty specific urology locums company. And in retrospect, it's not the best time to start a locums company 6 months before a global pandemic that just about killed us. I mean, and it was, it's tough for many, because nobody's hiring, when surgeons were getting laid off, and nobody's going to hire any extras to come in, but just fought through and have been growing since. And there's a lot of big competition out there, and I'm really proud of my team that we've built. All remote workers, and most are based out in Florida, and committed to paying docs the best. And I think we're living up to that based on the feedback that we get, and modeling our rates for hospitals in a way that's better from a budgeting standpoint from them. But really at the end of the day, it's when you look at physician, there's workforce issues, shortage issues, in all specialties, but specifically urology is probably the most difficult to recruit these days in the country. From a number standpoint, half of urologists are over 55 and a third are over 65 years of age. And if you look at 10,000 folks joining the ranks of Medicare every day in this country, and Medicare beneficiaries utilizing 3 times the urology services than those less than 65 years of age, there's a huge issue. And that has real life ramifications on patients throughout the country, especially the smaller, more rural areas. You don't even have to be rural to feel the effects of lack of urology human capital out there. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to do to staff hospitals that can't recruit urologists and provide care that otherwise would not be available. And so we're growing. Again, it's the school of life and business and startups. I learned way more doing, about business, doing it this way than you'll ever learn in any textbook or any business school degree or anything like that. So
with these types of businesses, I'm more curious. You really have two customers, right? You have to go find urologists, and then you also have to find hospitals, right? So which has been harder to recruit or find, or are they equally challenging or equally easy?
It's always kind of a chicken and egg kind of thing. Like you have to have doctors that want to work with you, and you have to have hospitals that line up. The sales cycle for a hospital, if you want to call it that, and getting through contracting and the legal department and all that stuff, it takes oftentimes months. And I've had to take up to well over a year or two to get from when the initial conversations have started to when we've had a doc start working at places. And doctors, the nice thing is that I think we're the only one that's run by a urologist. You can have my cell phone number if you were working with us, and if you have issues, the rental car's not there. I've gotten a call at 1 o'clock in the morning. Hey, I got here. There's no rental car. Okay, we'll get it fixed early on. And or issues of how to manage a patient situation or administrative issue at a place. That's kind of our value proposition, our differentiator versus a lot of the large companies. And then I can speak to the hospital side of things. I've developed service lines from scratch at places that didn't have any urology. But the hospital side is definitely the harder part to get.
I love how people can hear how much entrepreneurship starts to kind of grow, right? A lot of people start with real estate, but real estate really is a stepping stone for a lot of people because you learn the ideas of increasing income, decreasing expenses. You understand the cash flow, you understand how to build a team, and then you can parlay it into all kinds of businesses. And we see that happen. And it's so cool to see you just running multiple businesses now and multiple teams, it sounds like. How are you managing all of this? And how are you kind of getting through the tough times mindset wise?
I pray a lot. That's big for me. I think in Jesus, I think was quoted saying like that there are 2 emotions of an entrepreneur. It's like what was the word of it? Just like pure terror and then exhilaration. I mean, there's only 2 ways, so it's just working hard. There are many times as you can, whether you're just trying to get through, you're pulling down your first single, long-term rental, a single family house or whatever. There's so many times when things will pop up and say like, oh, this is voice people, your friends or whatever, to say, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, you should close this business down or whatever. It's just putting your head down and just grind. I mean, it's hard work and perseverance, and that's what makes the difference, I think. And yeah, so it's balance is difficult. I don't think you ever get it right. I mean, you'll always feel a little bit. If you feel a little balanced, something's not right. I always feel like you feel a little bit, also it's you'll be heavy in one thing and then kind of pull back there to reallocate your resources somewhere else. And I feel like that's kind of my rhythm of life.
Yeah, constant adjustment. I think Gary Keller in The One Thing, which is a really phenomenal book, he talks about that, right? He talks about like balance isn't real. It's just like a constant adjustment. And there are times where something in your life needs a little bit more from you and you adjust. And then other times you're giving more to something else. And so everyone's aiming for balance, but it's not really that. It's actually you're always in balance, but you're prioritizing and changing over time for what's important to you. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Really cool. Can you tell us about your nonprofit? Because I want you to talk about how you got to the point that you had financial freedom, and then how you had this realization that you wanted to give more.
Yeah. So so I'm kind of, it's not like it's not like my organization of sorts, but it goes back to, I had the opportunity to travel to the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo with my chairman, Dr. Smith at Vanderbilt, to work at essentially a fistula hospital, helping repair fistulas, which has come as a result of trauma from war, just really bad, bad things. And so I got to go over there twice, and had made some connections there, in the town of Bukavu. Kind of kept those connections for a while. That was in 2010, 2011. Fast forward to about 4 years ago or so. Long story short, got connected with a congregation of Congolese refugees here in San Antonio that were in the process of receiving other refugees. And if you can imagine, being settled by Catholic Charities and stuff, we're essentially being put, 10 folks in an apartment, coming here in December with flip-flops and shorts, and several friends of mine and from my Sunday school class in church got together, just like collecting furniture, clothes, and just helping, just trying to help folks that have that could benefit from some help. Became friends with this pastor, and having breakfast with him on a regular basis, almost kind of like a business mentor, and helping from their church standpoint. And long and short is, one day we're at breakfast and he said, hey, he goes, how can we start a church in the Congo? And I kind of chuckled. I said, hey, Pastor John, I said, we're trying to work on one here in San Antonio, and we've been meeting for a while for this, and halfway around the world. I said, let's just pray about it. So long story short, did some homework, and for about $250, I passed the hat in my Sunday school class one day. And I said, this is what it's going to cost to get us a permit from the government and rent a place and start a church there. And about 3 years later, we're up to about 6 churches, a couple schools, agricultural projects, a clinic, which when they said, can we start a clinic? And we hired 3 nurses that are working like 24-hour shifts. It's really more functioning like what we would say is a hospital than a clinic. Like, I thought we were going to be doing sore throats, that kind of stuff. No, they're delivering babies, people with cholera, getting IV, they're hanging out there at this house that we rent, and, getting IV hydration and so forth. So, and there's so many different projects. So I think that I'm really interested in like social enterprise, instead of just giving money, how do you develop economically sustainable businesses in a market economy, the profits from which can go in and help meet social needs. So what we did is that when we built churches, we would use the church building during the week for schools and places that weren't schools, and that they didn't have, a lot of kids didn't have access to education. And then we bought some additional land a year or so ago, and recently completed all the construction for a full like elementary school building, which is really cool. We had the inspectors from the Department of Education for Congo that came out of Bukavu. They came down to the town we're working in, Kamanyola, the city, and inspected, and we passed. I mean, they say we need some more books, so we're going to get some more books for the library there. And they say, and we got to build more toilets when we exceed too many students. So we have our things to work on as we grow. But it's just super exciting to see, what a little bit of money, how far it can go, relatively speaking, in many places in the world. So not just thinking about what you can do in your backyard, but other places as well. And when you work alongside your money, in those ways. So I could go on talking so many cool stories that come out of that. But it's like, you put together a good deal, and that's really fun. But like when you see this, and my WhatsApp, I mean, running construction projects via WhatsApp in Africa is a trip, But I'll tell you, I can get a lot more done faster in the Congo from San Antonio, Texas, than I can, down the street. You wire money over there. 2 days, the next day, you see the dump truck of the bricks getting, and then 2 days later, they're like, okay, here's the first wall. I'm like, it's really impressive, people's hunger and their desire to work. And sometimes people, just need a little bit of investment. So you start off investing in real estate, but then invest in people. That's got to be the best asset class to invest. There's so many opportunities.
And when we were talking before we started recording, you were talking about how you set goals, and oftentimes most of our goals when we first start out is for our families, right? But then eventually you get to the point that you have enough for your family, and then you start to set bigger goals. And can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know a lot of people in our community starting to get financial freedom, and then there's what you do after that, and you don't want to get lost in the middle.
Yeah. And I think it's important to start that thought process early on, and finding your why. Like, there's the whys for your family, but the why for, what's the purpose of your life? I mean, I don't mean to get, deep, but those are really big questions that need to be considered. You don't want to put that off, till too late. And so I think that, like you mentioned, it's, first thing, take care of your family, hit those goals there from a financial standpoint. But at some point, and that number is different for everybody, that you realize it doesn't really matter what more. It's not going to, all the data show, was it above $80,000 a year, you're not any happier, something like that. So it's not going to buy you happiness. Then you're like, do I just leave this all to my kids? No, you'll ruin them if you just leave them too much, because you kill their drive to do anything. So you got to do something. So I chew on this stuff a lot. It's, to whom much has been given, much is required. And like, how are you? And then also, when you think about one concept I learned from you all, I think on one of your podcasts, you're talking about the concept of return on equity, in maximizing, just that equity, whether in a property, making sure that the dollar is working for you, and from a return standpoint. But then you can also start and take that same concept to what's that return on equity, or that money or that capital, however you want to talk about it, for people around you, people in general, besides just yourself. And can you make that, can you synergize so it's actually working for you, but also working and helping other folks as well. And so it's really, that really evolves. And I think like having that, higher purpose in life. And for me as a Christian, that's, that's just, it's really about serving God and serving other folks. And you can spend the rest of your life, just trying to fulfill those goals. And I think you will, it has its own reward there. So that's kind of what drives me. I think I'm always thinking about.
Amazing. That's beautiful. So we always ask all of our guests two questions. The first one is, what is your definition of wealthy?
Ooh, I think it's having enough financial or sufficient financial and time resources to work on the things you want to work on. And then at the same time, having those valuable things or those worthy things for you to work on it. So I think it's the time and financial resources to work on those, on big things. So
yeah, and what I've heard, I just want to highlight what I heard you say now multiple times is growth and contribution. Growth and contribution, which is fulfillment, leads to fulfillment. And you can hear you echo, if you listen to this podcast, you can hear you echo those two things over and over again, growth and contribution. It's really cool.
Awesome. And what is one mindset, habit, or strategy that separates someone who is wealthy versus someone who is not?
Action. I think I will take two. So if you give me the liberty, action. And I think I've heard you say taking massive action, just taking action. And then perseverance, because, and I think I heard Steve Jobs say like 50%, up to 50% of the difference between successful and non-successful entrepreneurs is just perseverance. So you just got to be willing to work and take action, even when the doubts come up. So
amazing.
Yeah. So
can you tell everyone who's interested in learning more about the nonprofit you're involved with and your businesses where they can find more of you?
Yeah. So the website for our business is urologylocums.com. That's just our website. And if you want to, I'm working on it. So I'm trying to make it actually scalable to where I can actually do more. It's one of my, I need to readjust and put some more in this bucket for Congo. Actually, I spent this morning at a retreat with another organization called Here's Life Africa, which is really cool, and looking and collaborating with them in the Congo. But my email address is ian@urologylocums.com. And if you want to email me, I'd love to make a connection and talk to folks. So
thank you so much, Ian, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed the opportunity.